Hello and welcome to Irreverent. Now, normally we start this podcast off with a joke. This week it comes in the form of my co-host Eli, who's going to talk about IndyCar. Eli, go ahead.
To be fair, IndyCar wasn't the biggest joke this weekend.
Alrighty, all right. That was all I had. That's the best joke I had. Sorry, we hate each other. Anyway, this week on Irreverent, what you can look forward to is yes, Eli will be talking about this past week's IndyCar race at Rats. Was it? Did they race at Barber?
Toronto.
They raced at Barber. Wait.
No, this is the street race.
Yeah, okay. So we'll be talking about that. I will be tongue bathing and fanboying at NASCAR as usual. But guys, we need to mention that I went to this race in person, so we're going to have some fun with this. I took a lot of quality notes, and this will actually be a discussion where I'm actually halfway know what I'm talking about.
It'll be the
we'll talk about
first race we've ever covered with someone live.
That's true. And one of these days we're going to have to live stream at a race. That's going to be pretty lit. Mm-hmm. We'll do it soon. It's okay. Yeah. Eli hates me. That's why he didn't go to NASCAR this weekend. We'll get our relationship issues fixed, though, and we'll get to a race together soon. And, of course, after that, we have a surprise for the Eli 5 segment, which Eli hasn't told me what it is. He won't tell me what it is. Apparently, I'm just going to have to get my socks knocked off. And, of course, we're going to finish up. Oh, buckle up, guys. And then we're going to finish up with our news segment as usual. Maybe cover a few of maybe the not best open wheel races in the world, literally. And that'll be it. So let's go ahead and hand it over to my joke of a go host, Eli. Sorry, Eli. And he'll talk about the joke of a race.
To be fair, wasn't a terrible race, but also not the most exciting one. I'm just going to get this out of the way at the start. Colton Herta led, I believe it was 82 out of 85 laps. 81 out of 85 laps. Who led the other one? Oh, Marcus Ericsson. Okay.
Stingray Rob, obviously.
No, the only 3 lap leaders in this race were Herta, Dixon, and Ericsson. With 81 of them being Herta. Now, I will say something interesting. This weekend actually had a first for IndyCar. Can you guess what it was?
The first time Colton Herta won with a hybrid.
Technically true, but it's more interesting than that. And it does have to do
actually, let me guess. Oh, it does have to do with Colton Herta?
It does have to do with the fact that he won the race.
Oh, man. Okay, I don't know. Go ahead.
This is the first time in IndyCar history that the same driver has topped every single session of a weekend.
The first time they had a Verstappen.
Pretty much. All of the free practices, the qualifyings, even the warm-up, and the race win. All Herta. He was just completely dominant this weekend. Which, it's been a minute since I've got to say that.
Yeah, we do need to mention that Eli is a fan.
I am a Herta fan. I believe that it had been 41 races since his last win. Or something like that. So, yeah, it felt good.
Yeah.
But no, he completely destroyed this race. Fun fact, it also, can you guess how many laps before we had a full green flag lap?
Oh no, 10?
9. Lap 9 was the first full lap of green.
Wow.
Here's the thing. Unlike usual, this wasn't because they were just taking forever with safety cars. It was because there were 2 cautions in the first 8 laps.
You mean we're averaging you mean we're averaging caution cycles in 4.5 laps as opposed to 50 now?
I will say, I don't know if it's because of the hybrid being able to restart cars, or if it was just like the team at Toronto. The full course cautions didn't run that long, and there were a lot of them. There were a fair few, but they were all, except for a certain incident, wrapped up with in a reasonable time frame. Like about what you'd expect from like F1 sort of thing, which is
I hope
especially impressive.
the I was gonna say I hope the criticism was heard from Detroit.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Like it genuinely was impressive how quickly they were clearing things, especially considering this is a street race. It's not like it was a purpose-built facility where they've got, you know, the easy ability to get rid of these and clean up these incidents. But like
Yeah,
they did good.
I was gonna say like many people point out about F1 and NASCAR that like, hey, NASCAR averages 4 laps per caution cycle on ovals, and you're doing 10 at a road course. What's going on?
Yeah, that's the thing. And it's not even like it's not like it's a long lap. It's about a 1 minute lap. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a relatively short track, and they were getting everything cleared out. So it seems like they're actually listening.
Which makes me excited because I feel like ever since I was a kid, one of the worst parts of like watching IndyCar races with my grandpa was, yeah, it's like once there was a caution, me and grandpa were like, "You want to go eat something?"
That's the thing, is it's like you're used to it being like 10 minutes or longer. But no, they were quick, they were clean, they were efficient. It was great. But
It sounds like you're writing a review for a cleaning company.
I mean, I pretty
They were
much
quick.
am. I'm, talking about the marshals and the cleanup crew for the course.
The Stanley Steamer IndyCar series.
Hey, now that's an insult in this house.
Oh, guys, his dad owns a carpet cleaning company.
Oh. But yeah, no, like they did great. Uh, Someone else who was doing great this weekend, Andretti, because it wasn't just Herta lighting up the timing charts. This was actually an Andretti 1-2. Herta and Kirkwood, front row
Ooh.
to podium, 1-2. And that wasn't fully reliant on team orders. They actually were allowed to fight. They didn't fight particularly hard, mostly because if you fight particularly hard on this track, someone's probably going to crash. But they were fighting each other. The biggest time they weren't fighting was on restarts because, well, to be fair, a lot of the cautions came off of restarts. That's a pattern you'll notice this week. Because that also comes up, that comes up for NASCAR too.
Wait, what came up?
Uh, Restart lap, causing another caution.
Oh my gosh.
I told you I watched that
Yeah.
race too.
But no, you didn't have to make me depressed like that this early into the episode.
Well, it's either I mention it now or you have to be the one that brings it up later.
We're like trying to find out who tells that your best friend's dead.
Pretty much. But yeah, no, in all,
Yep.
it was a solid race. A couple things I want to point out. Alexander Rossi broke his finger in free practice 1. He went into a tire barrier, didn't pull his hands out of the wheel, broke his thumb. So to sub him in, and to get him to stop airing all of the dirty laundry in public, McLaren brought Theo back. So Porsche has Rossi's seat until he's back, and it is probably talk about this in the news segment, but it's starting to seem like McLaren might be pulling strings to try and get him a seat somewhere else on the grid for next year to get him to shut up.
Hey, Like, we're so sorry we hired a pay driver instead, but hey, we can find you this like C tier seat next year.
Yeah, it is very much starting to seem. We'll get into it in the news, but there was a very sudden, stark turnaround in how Theo was talking about the whole incident. And yeah. Speaking of the pay driver, um, well, I'm just gonna go to the overall standings, not the race standings, the overall season championship standings. Uh, Nolan Siegel is currently 25th with 88 points. Where do you think Theo is, and how many points, plus or minus, do you think he has?
I want to say he was in the top 20 actually, and I want to say he's above by 70.
Not quite anymore, because Nolan has 2 more races under him this season. But Theo is in 24th, beating him by 3 points, with at least one, maybe 2 less races. I forget exactly how many.
Well, yeah. Well, but it also shows you know how bad he is because with all those championships under his belt, all he can do is beat this talented 19-year-old by what 2 points? That 3 points. That's it. I can see why they got rid of Teo. He's obviously a disappointment.
Yeah. No, fun thing was they were actually running right next to each other for most of the race until late in the race when Siegel crashed out. To be fair, it was not Siegel's fault. Some nonsense. We'll get to that later, but at the very end of the race, some nonsense happened. It was the most exciting part of the race. But someone else I want to shout out is somebody we shouted out last time we talked about IndyCar. Um, Mostly because this man appeared from nowhere, sucks at qualifying. Like, he's god awful at it. But can make moves in the race. And that is Toby Sowery. He started 21st, I believe, and made his way up to 15th. It would seem that our host this week is having some technical difficulties, so we're going to go to a short break, and then we will resume, as I will talk about later on in the race.
And now a word from Stanley Steamer.
One. And we are back.
Stanley Steamer makes your home clean.
If you're listening to the episode later, that doesn't make any sense because that was edited out. And nobody's live right now, so I don't even know why I'm doing this bit. But I am. Anyway, so Toby Sowery, he qualified like 21st, 22nd, something like that. Comes back up to 15th. Not as heroic as Mid-Ohio, to be fair. But still. Nobody had heard of this guy until recently. But, yeah. So, not a ton else really happened this race. There were some occasional incidents, as we talked about, but in all, it was fairly straightforward. Racing was, for the most part, relatively clean. Some of the usual suspects, like Dixon and Polo and the like, they didn't have great qualifying, but they fought their way back up the field. But it wasn't enough. You got Herta and Kirkwood coming in 1-2. But the big thing that happened in the race was, what lap would that have been? Let's say lap 77, I think it was. 13 to go. Yeah. Pato locks up his rear tires going into a sweeping turn and spins. Problem is, they had come off a caution not too long ago, so the field was fairly packed up, and it's a blind corner. So 5 cars leave the race, one of them being upside down, and the race gets red flagged. Yeah, did you not hear about this?
No, I was too busy looking at my race that got red flagged.
Yeah, no, it was, everybody came out fine. Nobody was hurt. But yeah, it was, it looked scary. I will say that. Oh, what's his name? Let me find him here. Ferrucci ended up in the catch fence. Like, sent fully airborne, hit the catch fence upside down. Like, he if this incident had happened, like, a decade ago, he's probably dead. If it weren't for the top of the arrow screen, the hoop, he's not walking away from this.
He would have been a regular Santino. Well done.
It was bad, but the drivers who got caught up in this were it was Award, Ericsson, Fittipaldi, Ferrucci, and Siegel, I believe. All of them ended up. That's how they ended up leaving the race. Mind you, I know what I just said, that it is worth noting, yes, if you're paying attention to what I'm talking about and look at the standings, Toby Sori was the last car that actually finished the race in 15th. But he got up to 15th on merit, and then everyone crashed out. It's not that everyone in front of him crashed out, and that's how he got to 15th. If you were wondering.
Poor Toby. He was the GOAT. We just couldn't see it.
Yeah, on paper, it looks like what happens is he just managed to not crash, and that's how he got his position. No. It's just that everybody behind him did. But yeah, it was, as you might expect, when 5 cars in one corner are completely destroyed. And the catch fencing got
the what?
hit. Got hit by a flying car. Because, mind you, Ferrucci ramped off of the front of Pato's car, like, full airborne off of the front of his car. But,
he hit it so hard, now it... Never mind. I came so close to making a joke you were going to have to edit out.
It's a good thing you stopped yourself. This episode's already got more than an average amount of editing. Because I have to make 2 cuts instead of 1. But anyway, no. Yeah, he went full airborne, hit the crash fence, landed upside down. Marcus Ericsson tried to continue. His suspension was completely busted. It was never happening, so he had to pull over like 3 turns later and abandon it. And then we get red flagged for a minute. I'm going to be honest, I was watching the replay, so I don't actually know how long the red flag was, because it was cut. It was busy Sunday. Cut me some slack. But, yeah, then it goes back to running. Everything's fairly tight, and this is kind of when Andretti's, like, actually kind of starts implementing some team orders. For most of the race, they were letting Herta and Kirkwood, like, if they were going to fight, they can fight. The biggest time of this was at the original start. They were fighting for the lead. But this was the time where they're like, There's 13 laps to go. Field's packed up. We don't want to lose this. So Kirkwood started playing rear gunner. And they managed to keep their lead, take the win. Breaking the
That's how you do it.
streak. Yep. Breaking the streak, and then you got Colton Herta, forever in the history books, is the first person in IndyCar history to top every session in a single weekend.
You know what? Andretti is such a good racing team that I think they should take their talents to F1 and have Colton Herta as a driver.
I agree. They can't be worse than certain other teams, that's for sure. Especially considering it looks more and more likely that Alpine is going to be running a Mercedes engine in 2026 rather than a Renault.
I'm glad we talked about that when it happened, because as time has gone on, I've learned more about Renault and Alpine the last few months. It is absurd. Not absurd. It's actually depressing that they have just abandoned their own engine program.
It's literally the entire reason they're in F1. Anyway, we're not on to that
Actually really
discussion.
sad. We are because the host said we are.
All right, we're cutting forward a little while, but yeah, no, it is absolute hot nonsense, but it is looking increasingly likely that that is going to happen. Let me see if I can't find, I think I saved an article that I saw about this. It was someone from, actually from Alpine talking about the potential of it.
Kind of sad because I do I think Renault has some great looking sports cars, and especially Alpine as kind of like almost their Shelby division.
Yeah.
It's very Alpine is in a really not just the F1 team, but Alpine as a car brand is in a really weird spot where big car companies, like Ford or Nissan or Mercedes, they all have their own performance division, like AMG or Nismo or Shelby. But it's not an entirely different automaker. Alpine is it's kind of like if Toyota, if 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 Honda dubbed Acura its performance line and exclusively released NSXs the rest of its life.
Yeah.
That's kind of what Alpine is to Renault. Renault's like, this is our premium performance line, and they've only ever released the A110.
They've only ever released a
Great car,
actually fairly affordable sports car.
I was gonna say, we talked about this before. The A110 is not a bad car to only produce, but you're trying to promote a Formula One team, and Formula One is based off of, as of right now, really large companies, either in the car world or apparently the sports drink world. But people are like, F1, right? Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, Alpine.
At this point, something hilarious, and I just realized this. Red Bull has more of a halo car than Alpine does.
More of a what?
A halo car, like the top of the line, ultra, this is what we can do car.
You're right, and that's depressing.
Yeah, it's the industry term for the automaker making their pinnacle of a performance or the pinnacle of a luxury car. Their Halo model.
Oh,
Red Bull's
okay,
releasing a hypercar.
Yeah, it's just kind of sad. I mean, I like Renault. I don't know a ton about Renault because Renault isn't a huge automaker compared to your Volkswagens or GMs or Fords. But I mean, the cars I've seen I've liked, and I feel like over in France and everything, in Europe, it's a decently recognizable manufacturer. But yeah, when Alpine is trying to promote this brand, or I should rather say Renault is trying to promote this brand, that it almost feels like they're not themselves trying to promote.
Yeah.
Do they want do they want Alpine? Are they purposefully holding back on any more model production because they're trying to make people see the word Alpine and know it's synonymous with Formula One? But you kind of got to start winning. And when you do start winning, it's kind of nice to do it with your own engine.
That's the thing, is like how much would it undermine if they started winning championships again? How much would it undermine that if it's with a Merc engine?
Yeah, yeah. Like, I, you know what? I guess it can be done. If you think about McLaren wasn't a huge automaker until the mid 2010s, and their Formula One team was running a Mercedes engine. That's how they were winning all their races.
Yeah, but also they were the factory team. Mercedes didn't have their own team. And also, they're still not an engine manufacturer. Like most McLaren supercars and hypercars, if I'm remembering right, most of them still run Merc engines.
Interesting. Another point as to why Renault just sucks.
Yeah, that's the thing, is it's like Renault is a major manufacturer. They're not, a bespoke hypercar brand. There's a bit of a difference there.
Basically, if you want really nice Renault cars, you either have the Renault RS01 or you have the Alpine A110,
Yeah.
which I love both of them. They're beautiful, adorable cars, but I just don't know what they're trying to do.
I yeah, I don't know what their goal is.
For a while, it just kind of seemed like their goal was Esteban Ocon, but apparently that's not it anymore.
Oh god, that's gonna be interesting next year.
Anyway, the host say we go finish up the IndyCar discussion, but I wanted to make that F1 sidebar, F1 / car manufacturing sidebar.
I mean, look, if you're not gonna let Andretti in, but you're gonna let that joke happen. But anyway, no, that
Andretti, I was going to say Andretti is going to bring in an engine supplier that is dominant. It's going to be a very legit engine.
exactly.
I don't think Andretti, like 10 years into its F1 tenure, is going to be like, maybe we should run a Merc engine.
Not only that, like Andretti doesn't pull out of series.
Yeah.
They're there to race and nothing else. You got like all these manufacturers talking about like how, oh, we could, like we could leave and threatening stuff like that. And as long as there is racing to be had, Andretti will be there.
I really want Andretti to come in with Honda into NASCAR.
That would be kind of awesome.
Well, actually, finish up the IndyCar because it's actually going to happen.
I'm pretty much done.
Okay. On to the NASCAR weekend. Before we even talk about NASCAR, sidebar, I it is actually a done deal that Honda is going to enter NASCAR pretty soon. I
Great.
don't know if that's next year or 2026, but Honda is coming into NASCAR. It's not new news, but I'm just saying, like, with so many open charters available, which are slowly getting eaten up, but there's still a few charters available. And now is the absolute optimal time for Andretti to come into NASCAR. And they don't even have to come in with Honda. Just they need to stake their claim. Like buy your two charters, know that you can own them, maybe bring in rats. They're using does Andretti use Honda engines, right?
Yeah,
Honda,
in IndyCar.
and it would kind of be a shame, but for the sake of non-competition, maybe you could start out with Chevrolet since you already have ties to Cadillac. Maybe Andretti can come in with Chevrolet to NASCAR, buy their charters, and then as soon as Honda's ready, then go ahead and switch over.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the thing in NASCAR is that manufacturer deals can be a good long time. Like Stuart Haas, I think, signed a 10-year contract with Ford that they would run their cars. So it's going to be a sticky thing where it's kind of going to be one of those things where unfortunately the charters may be bought up before Andretti can come in. But if Andretti does come in, they might have to be with Chevrolet for a while before they could make the switch to Honda when they come in. But you know, I just when Honda comes in, I think that what it has kind of been delaying Honda all these years is knowing they have to develop an engine, A, but B, there has to be a team willing to take that dive with them because Rick Hendrick is never not going to be Chevrolet. He just isn't. Joe Gibbs is probably, as long as Toyota is in and competing in NASCAR, Joe Gibbs will probably always be with Toyota. And Roger Penske will only ever run Dodge or Ford. He's never run anything else besides Chevrolet engines. And you have RFK, which once again has ties to Dodge because of Brad Keselowski. But then you have Ford, so it's and then you have RCR, who's very Chevrolet. That's the thing. I think what I'm saying is old money is kind of a problem in NASCAR because you've gotten all these monopolies who refuse to leave their brands. And so a company like Honda has been delaying all these years because they're not even sure if anybody would even want to run their car unless someone new came in, which NASCAR would make it a lot easier for Andretti to enter than F1 will. I'm sure Andretti could get on pretty quickly into NASCAR. But yeah, like if Honda is waiting for one of the current teams to switch manufacturers and to begin a tie with them, like an alliance, there isn't any good options really because 2311 is always going to be Toyota as long as Denny Hamlin co-owns it. So 2311 and Joe Gibbs are kind of a no. RCR and Rick Hendrick are Chevrolet fanboys who are never not going to be Chevrolet. And Roger Penske and Brad Keselowski are definitely Ford men, which but honestly, I don't know, because that's the thing. Roger Penske doesn't have any Honda ties, and I doubt Roger would be the guy to start brand new when he has already all this like success that's guaranteed from Ford. And then you have um, Richard or Legacy Motor Club, which has just signed its contract with Toyota this year, and they're going to be with Toyota for a while. So it is kind of like, yeah, if I'm Honda, if I'm going to enter NASCAR, I'm either going to have to enter with a really underfunded program, or I'm going to have to allure someone new like Andretti to come run my car for me. And honestly, I can see it happening. I mean, Toyota, this is how dedicated Chevrolet and Ford's NASCAR fan base and roots are. To this day, Toyota only has two teams in NASCAR. One of them has been Joe Gibbs, who has been with Toyota since they entered, and one of them is owned by a Joe Gibbs racing driver. Toyota has never been able to get any more support than that, other than a couple of underfunded cars or Furniture Row Racing. Barney Visser, a legend. Is Barney Visser dead? I forget, but basically, what I'm saying is Honda is going to enter, but I'm kind of just wondering what Andretti's timeline is, or if anybody's timeline is, to get a Honda in the series, because it's going to be a whale of a time to try to convince an old rich man to run your car because the Chevrolet isn't good enough anymore. So, but of the guys who can run, I don't see any of them switching. So I very much would see Honda coming in with someone new, and I want it to be Andretti, but I just don't see what Andretti's timeline is, or if there's going to be charters available when Honda's ready. So I think the most likely thing would be that a few underfunded teams would have to be bought out of their charters.
Yeah. I'd say I think Andretti's
It's kind of just
probably.
yeah.
I would think Andretti would probably hold off on making a decision like that for a little bit longer. I almost feel like that would be the kind of thing that Andretti would do. I could see Andretti doing it just as a thing to spite FOM.
Oh, totally, yeah.
Like, you don't think we're going to take this serious? Okay, well, here's another series we can enter. And I almost could see Andretti just continuously entering every series they can until they get into F1.
They're gonna be in what is it? The oh man, what is that ridiculous series that has like a they kind of look like monster trucks, but they're huge off-road electric vehicles?
Extreme E. I'm pretty sure Andretti did run a team there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, they would totally do that. Yeah, they're gonna run literally everything and win everything until they get into F1.
They're going to be
Um,
responsible for bringing Mitsubishi back to the WRC.
but I feel like Andretti could totally support like I know Andretti would want to be either I think there's been rumors that NASCAR is going to limit teams to 3 charters per team. The current limit is 4. Um, I could see Andretti running a full plate of 3 or 4 cars on a team. I could also see them doing much better with just 2 cars to start with. Maybe bring in a couple of standout oval drivers from your IndyCar team. I mean, how amazing would it be if IndyCar they wouldn't, but I'd love it because Joseph is kind of in his early 30s. He'll be to his mid 30s by the time they could lure him into doing it. But like, hey, Joseph, Penske kind of wants to let you go for younger talent. Do you want to drive the stock car for 5 years on ovals and win everything for us? Like, you can't tell me Joseph's not going to win the Brickyard 400 every year in an Andretti Honda.
Yeah.
I would love to see that. I really would love to see Honda come into NASCAR. Like, it would be so. Like, I haven't seen a move like that in my life because, like, I've been to NASCAR since 2018, and that's been long enough to see like your childhood kind of go away, where like the model makes and models you grew up with are kind of have gotten slowly replaced over time, or kind of like I started with the Ford Fusion and entire makes are different now. They've been overhauled. Now we're in the Mustang. But yeah, I've always had kind of the same thing when it comes to cars to look forward to on weekends. It's always going to be Ford, Chevrolet, Toyota, and it's always going to be Mustang, Camry, Camaro. But in a few years, that could actually really change because it's like I feel like the last time there was anything like that was 2013 when Dodge left NASCAR. But at the same time, that was kind of a loss. Like the last time we actually added a manufacturer was, I think it was '07 when Toyota came in. So yeah, I mean it's probably going to be almost 20 years until we get a new manufacturer in NASCAR. But yeah, like I it wouldn't have mattered if I had been into NASCAR when I was 3, which I was, but I wasn't because Lightning McQueen was the only NASCAR I knew. But I wasn't old enough to appreciate at all, Toyota coming into NASCAR and if Honda comes into NASCAR, it's going to be amazing to be like, wow, we have an entirely new brand, entirely new manufacturer going to compete and start their legacy and everything, and that's gonna be awesome. Because how do I put this? I feel like NASCAR, since it is a mostly spec series, it can get to it can be a problem when there's too many manufacturers because you want like plenty of cars per manufacturer to win, so one doesn't just dominate all the time, kind of like F1. And since NASCAR very much doesn't want to be F1, they're probably going to limit how many manufacturers they can have. But at the same time, the only 2 manufacturers that have any level of interest in NASCAR is Honda and Dodge, which I say interest, but Dodge really isn't interested. But I mean, like feasible interest that could happen because other than those, like Tesla's not going to come in NASCAR unless they electrify it. And what other American brands do you really have? Slash brands that are built in the USA.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to see Cadillac coming in NASCAR, but I mean, that would be awesome. That would be an amazing fourth or fifth manufacturers. Like, people have already predicted Cadillac's going to take over Chevrolet anyway.
I was
Because
gonna
Chevrolet
say
isn't going to
GM
have any more.
wouldn't double up though. If anything, it would be a
What?
rebrand.
Well, you say that, but at one time, GM was running 3 of their brands in NASCAR,
Yeah,
and
but
they're running
also
2.
at that time it was kind of like they were also being begged by NASCAR to do that.
Well, also they were running 2 brands as recently as 2003
You say that like you
with
weren't one.
Pontiac and what do I say?
I said you say that like you weren't one.
I wasn't even born.
That
But
doesn't
what I'm
help your
saying is,
case.
I I don't see why GM wouldn't let it happen. Like, yeah, it's competition, but at the end of the day, GM's going to be the winner. So unless they're really trying to hardcore promote one vehicle over the other, I don't see why they wouldn't let it happen. Like, it makes monetary sense, it makes competitive sense.
Wouldn't they need to have
Um,
different engines for them though?
I don't think so. I would have to check what they used in the Pontiac, but I don't see in the NASCAR rulebook why the Cadillac couldn't just use the Chevrolet R07. Um,
Say, I thought the
I mean,
way it
it's
was,
completely up to
I thought the
what
way
I
it
say.
was that each manufacturer was required to bring their own engine.
I'll have to double check. I don't see why Cadillac couldn't be in NASCAR. What probably is going to happen is a rebrand because Chevrolet has decided to stop making cars entirely, so we might see the CTS in there instead.
Hey
Which
now, the
the
new
CTS
Corvette
Black,
leaked today.
no, we'll talk about that later because I have a lot to say and we have to get into the race. I've been talking about manufacturers for like 15 minutes.
Yeah, you kind of have.
I already argued with my cousin about it earlier today, so I have some things to say. Um, yeah, let's get on to the race. So, guys, if there are any listeners, which we didn't even start with, so who cares? Let's get on to our second feature race of the week, and that was NASCAR at Indianapolis. Once again, I was there in person, and Eli wasn't there, so I wasn't yelled at.
I was still thinking of it.
Yeah, Eli was texting, raging at me for leaving him. But yeah, so 22nd race of the year. I'm going to go ahead and give the listener kind of an insider thought, or my inside thoughts as I'm amping up for the race. So really, I'm not having too much more hype than I thought I was going to have, which for me is still very excited because I like a lot of people have been very excited for NASCAR to come back to the Brickyard because I'm sure you can sympathize with this thought, Eli, but like when NASCAR announced in 2020 that they weren't coming back to the oval for 2021, it hit me the wrong way as a sport. It's like the integrity of the sport was kind of affected by that to me because it's like the Brickyard 400 wasn't just another race you could just throw out like a second Kansas race every year or a second Texas race every year. You only go to the oval once every year, and that is one of your 4 crown jewel events.
It did
And
strike me as
you're
kind of odd listening to the commentary how big of a deal they were making it that it was the 30th anniversary of this when they had kind of abandoned it for the last several years.
yeah, so to educate you in case you didn't know and to educate your average Joe listener, this was a very fan driven move by NASCAR. They decided to go to the road course layout of Indianapolis because the Generation 6 car, a lot of fans felt like was better on road courses. And it was fine. I'm always going to be an oval preference guy when it comes to stock car racing because to me that is stock car racing. It was fine. But this weekend showed me something. And I'll get to that in a second, but I did want to finish with we've been at the road course for the last 3 years, 2021, 2, and 3. And now I can get to the part where none of those races to me were exceptionally good. Because I went back and actually did research this week and rewatched the entire 2018 and 2019 races. And I watched the 2020. I didn't watch either of those, which is why I went back and watched them. But I wanted to watch the last 3 Brickyards before we left. And I can confidently say a stock car is better at the Indianapolis Oval than it is the road course, even in the Gen 6 era. I like road racing. Obviously, F1's my second favorite sport. And I'm always okay with Grand Prix style racing or road course racing, but it's different if it's a purpose-built road course, which in a way Indianapolis is. But Indianapolis has always been an oval when it comes to stock car racing. It's always been about the oval. And the fans are right. It's a one-lane oval. It's not like your typical multi-groove oval that provides great racing. Indianapolis, once again, is kind of like Pocono. Back to my rant or positive rant last week. Pocono and Indianapolis require the same skill set because they are kind of one-lane super speedways. But a lot of passing can get done because of the huge straightaways, the 5/8 mile straightaways that provide drafting opportunities. And for most of this race, I was afraid that I was going to sound like an idiot when I said this on the podcast. But Kyle Larson proved me wrong. And we'll expound that later. But in conclusion, I'm glad we're back at the Oval. That was my thought going into the weekend to the race was that I'm just so glad we're back at the Oval. The road course racing to me, because I didn't watch 21 or 2. I watched last year when Michael McDowell won, and I thought to myself, man, I missed the Oval because it didn't matter to me if it was a Gen 6 or 7 stock car. NASCAR is better at the Oval, at the super speedway. And yes, is it in the shadow of the Indy 500? Of course. It's never not going to be because the Brickyard 400 isn't in NASCAR's DNA. It was an addition in the 90s that fit really well, but it's not their Daytona.
That is kind of one thing I did want to touch on was the commentators would not stop trying to act like this race was almost as important as the Indy 500.
Yeah, it's not the Indy 500. It's a crown jewel race, and don't get me wrong, it's a crown jewel race, and it's important, but it's the fourth best of the 4 crown jewels. Like winning this race isn't the same as winning the Southern 500 or the 600. It's the fourth best, but it's still, this is a very important race to NASCAR. But yeah, no, it's not an Indy 500 deal. And for reference, there was only 70,000 fans at this race, most of which were on the front stretch where I was.
I kind of think of it like saying that, Monaco and Formula E is the biggest race of their season. It's like, it's true. And it's usually the best race. But it's not the most, it's nowhere near as important as F1 at Monaco. Which, while I hate that race and it's terrible, that is still the more prestigious of the two.
And frankly, yeah, this is my fourth of the crown jewels. This is my fourth favorite to watch because listeners will know I'm a sucker for the 600. It's a day into night race. It's a long one. I love the track. It's a great racetrack, especially with this next gen car. It is a bomb, like the bomb. It's amazing with this car. The Southern 500 is another long night. The Southern 500 is so fun to watch, to me at least. It's kind of more of a one lane race as well. but the passes, because it's such a tight racetrack, passes do happen, and it's always chaotic when they do. So you look forward to Darlington for that. And the Daytona 500, nothing needs to be said. But this race, yeah, of the 4 crown jewels, this one is to me the least exciting, but I still look forward to it. So yeah, just before we get super hardcore into the race, that was the thought I wanted to give the listeners was, man, I'm glad we're back at the Oval. And I don't regret saying that because this race to me was great, and I'm going to mansplain to Eli why it was great.
You
And
cannot
that's the
tell
truth
me
of
that the first. There is nothing that you can say that will convince me that the first stage was worth anything, though.
Let me check my notes. You're probably right.
The biggest shock of stage
Mm-hmm.
1 was that some people managed to do things that meant they could have potentially pulled off a 2-stopper. That is the only thing the commentators had to talk about the entire time.
I do believe William Byron wrecked out in the first stage.
He did. He spun. Bounced across the wall.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, let's get into stage 1. I get to IMS. This is my second time there. Listeners, I will advertise IMS. There is a bathroom and a concession stand every other opening on the grandstand. It is amazing. Go to IMS. It's a great racetrack. The hats are $40, but it makes up for it with convenience. It's a great racetrack. So yeah, I head in right when the race starts. So like, I thought I was going to be late, but I get there right when the race starts. And you know what, Eli? I'm going to talk about something, and that's about the noise of NASCAR. It is the best sounding motorsport in the world to me. It's my opinion. I love the sound of NASCAR so much. And I'm going to give a very unbiased opinion personally, because this is once again my opinion. I went to the Indianapolis Grand Prix 2 months ago, the Suncio Grand Prix, and I like NASCAR way better than IndyCar in terms of noise. Like when an IndyCar goes by, it's kind of like a jet. It's kind of high pitched. It's not really a roar. It's mostly a really loud whine. And I actually wrote that down as a note when I watched the race, but even before we had the podcast, like to me, the sound of racing is very important, and I want to kind of remember in my mind's eye what it was, or mind's ear, I guess. And IndyCar, it wasn't a scream like a V10, and it wasn't a roar like your typical V8. It was very much a whine. TV actually kind of does the noise of IndyCar justice. And I remember when I was watching, I'm like, I like loud cars, and this is okay. Like the noise is okay. I'm okay. I'll live with it. It just wasn't my favorite. It almost hurt me. Like it almost hurt your head. It's kind of such a whine. But the minute the race started, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is why I love NASCAR. These cars actually sound amazing. They are loud enough to rip off anybody's ear, but you almost thank them for doing it because they sound so good. And in a V8, these R07 TRD Roush Yates V8s, these don't whine, these roar. That's why it's called NASCAR Thunder. It's a real thing. It's like when it goes by you, it doesn't give you kind of this aftershock of a pierce in your ear like IndyCar does. It almost just kind of like vibrates your ribs. And yeah, it sounds like thunder. But yeah, I was like, man, this is such a good sounding sport. I love it. So basically, my enjoyment starts as soon as I enter the grandstand, and I just become just like yelling Neanderthal the entire race because I love it so much. So yeah, just to start that off, listeners, if you haven't been to IMS, go at some point, even if it's just the Suncio Grand Prix. It's great. And if you've never listened to that kind of NASCAR, you can go to your local dirt track, and that's kind of similar. It's very similar, but NASCAR has its own roar, and I highly recommend listening to it. So yeah, enough about how much I love the noise. The first stage, like Eli said, wasn't anything too interesting. It was won by Denny Hamlin. Is that it? Yeah, Denny Hamlin.
Yeah, I believe.
And yeah, it was big. William Byron crashing out. He was definitely a contender for the day. Definitely a favorite to win today. You know what I mean, Sunday. He was definitely a favorite to win. But yeah, nothing crazy happens. I'm gonna look at my notes really quick just to make sure I didn't. Um, yeah, okay, I got a few notes. I already talked about the noise. I was gonna discuss the package because in the first stage, what interested me was actually the racing. Actually, maybe I should wait off for later on this. I will. I'll wait till stage 3 for this note. Um, but yeah, let's actually go to the end of stage 1, and I'm gonna say another thing that's different in person. When you're watching TV, stage racing has always been scrutinized. It's always been critiqued. People are like, "This isn't good for racing. It's not pure racing. You ruin strategy. You ruin yada yada yada." As a fan in the stands, stage racing is awesome because at normal races, if you leave to use the bathroom or go buy food or just take care of yourself, you're going to miss something important. Or if you don't miss something important, you're just going to miss several laps. When stage breaks happen, it's a guarantee, and you can plan your day around those stage breaks. And as a guy who definitely wants to take breaks every once in a while during a race to go get a snack, go use the bathroom, it's so nice to have a kind of a checkpoint to be like, okay, as soon as we hit this lap, I'm going to go down and do what I need to do and come back and we'll get back to racing. Because, stage breaks only take about 4 or 5 laps to get restarted and pit cycled and everything through. So yeah, NASCAR did this to create cautions and storylines and points and whatever it may be, listener attention span, watcher attention span. But as a fan in the stands, stage racing is actually pretty cool. And I'm also going to say a note before Eli yells at me. When you're at a NASCAR, because I forgot to even to think about this, because my first race was at Michigan a couple years ago, and I didn't really think about it much. But when you are a person who's really sensitive to noise, because listeners, I'm not kidding. NASCAR is loud. NASCAR is probably, if not the loudest motorsport in the world, it's darn close. It's loud. As a person like me who's very sensitive to noise, you have to take care of yourself, and the only really way to tolerate it is kind of get into the race so you don't have to think about it. And also the fact that I love the noise despite how much it destroys my ears. I love it. But stage racing provides an opportunity for those who maybe really want to enjoy a NASCAR race but aren't sure if they can handle the noise. It provides them, yeah, that much needed break from the sensory overload. So, and once again, it's something you can plan for, and it's actually really nice because it can almost calm you down to know that, okay, I have a guaranteed break at this lap. So you can yell at me now, Eli, but basically the point was, as a spectator in the crowd, I like stage racing.
So there are two things I want to talk about. First of all, this is something
Oh
that
my god.
this is a very quick thing. And it's not a huge thing. It's actually something that bothers me that goes along with what you were saying. Um, it does kind of annoy me that races don't just have free earplugs available.
That
Like cheap
is true.
disposable ones.
We have racing electronics, but that's $70 a headset to rent.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like you can do that, or you can buy like $20 branded earplug. Like, why do they not? You can go to the hardware store, buy a few hundred of those disposable foam earplugs for like $5.
My
Is that
and I
too
agree
hard
with
for
your
them to have some buckets of those sitting around for people who have problems, who might need something like that, and not realize how bad it is? Like, these
I
people are spending a decent amount of money. The 2 cents is worth it.
I like your point. My headphones cost like $6 at Harbor Freight. Why is it actually gonna break this multi-$100 million company's wallet to provide us some headphones or bare minimum, like you said, soft foam earplugs? Come on.
Yeah, like like it would be a couple of cents just for disposable earplugs. I understand if it's like something more than that, beyond that, like noise canceling headphones or something like that. Yeah, no, whatever. If you want to do special stuff with that, but just like have some buckets sitting around, or just like at the stand, just have, just a bucket full of the little packs of disposable earplugs just for people. The other one, my other point is, I think you just made the only valid argument for stage racing I've ever heard.
You mean you're not going to yell at me?
No, because
My God.
especially when, and I don't quite understand why this is, but NASCAR races seem to just run longer than everything else, even when they're a similar number of laps, even when the cars are going a similar speed. But like this was a 3 hour long race. And it was pack racing. I mean it was line racing, but still.
Same thing.
Pretty much. But yeah, in person that does make a bit more sense. I still don't know if I think the sacrifice for the sporting aspect is worth it. But yeah, no, that's a valid reason.
You know what? It feels good to be heard. I've always been an advocate for stage racing because as a kid, I actually really liked the breaks, and I liked that the breaks meant something to the overall championship for the year. You know, the points awarded, the stage, the playoff point. I kind of liked it because teams have to strategize. Do I want stage points or do I want the race win? So I like that as a kid. But as an adult who goes to these races now, it's actually nice. It's nice to know that okay, dinner. I'm going to eat dinner at 5:30, and stage two ends at lap 100. I'll just go down to the stand at lap 100 and go get a hot dog, and you don't miss anything.
Yeah.
Love you,
Of course,
buddy.
another solution for that
All
is
right.
be like, any other sporting event and have vendors come through the stands. But that's too advanced
Yeah,
for
yeah, and
racing's
you know what?
understanding.
And and the movie Cars. Remember that? Remember during the race there was that one car with like this the popcorn everything is like get your popcorn here,
Mm-hmm.
like coming the line, like we need that guy, we need this dude. What I want is I want the stairs to turn into a ramp or have a ramp section with an old dude piloting a golf cart and just be like get your ice cream here.
I mean, the thing is, like, every other sport does that, except for motorsport for some reason.
Is it because I don't know, is it because of the poor air quality?
That's
Could
like,
contaminate the food.
I genuinely struggle to think of a reason, because if anything, motorsport is the one that makes the most sense, because it is the one that has the least frequent breaks. Even when you have scheduled breaks, they're less frequent than they are in any other form of sport.
Oh, 100%. Halftime is 10 to 20 minutes.
Like, football, you have even like between downs or when they're switching sides, right?
Yeah, like quarter ends.
Quarter ends, you have whenever they this shows how much I care about football and also how tired I am. But whenever the team who's on offense switches, there's a word for that. I know there is, but I can't be bothered to remember it. Like things like that though, you still have like a few minutes before anything actually is going to happen.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, even the one series that has regularly scheduled breaks in its race, it's still like 45 minutes to an hour between them.
Yeah. And those breaks last for I would say 10 minutes at most, if
Yeah.
not 5.
It is weird that they don't have concessions people going through the stands in motorsport.
I would like it as a fan. If NASCAR, if you're listening, I'm always going to advocate for you guys. We're not getting enough. We need food. We
Food,
need food at the
beer.
racetrack.
Like just think about how much more beer sales would go up if they didn't have to get
Oh
up and get
yeah.
it themselves.
Think of anything. I mean, why does DoorDash do so well? Because people don't have to get up and do it themselves. anyway. But yeah, well, I'm glad we could agree on that point. But yeah, I really enjoyed them. So yeah, that's the end of stage 1. There's nothing, like Eli said, remarkable to say. And to be honest, I don't have any notes for stage 2 either.
Say, I can
Because
remember a few cautions, but nothing major. I mean, heck, a lot of people managed to turn it into a 2-stop race, which included them not stopping in stage 2.
All right, I have a few things to say because I went in person. I'll provide in-person perspectives. Right, wait, did Joey Logano wreck in stage 3? I think he did.
I thought it was stage 3.
I was going to say, if I don't have any notes, I'll just go ahead. Unless, did Martin Truex Jr. wreck in stage 2 or 3? Because I have a note on that.
I think it was 3 because I thought he won stage 2.
Bubba Wallace won stage 2.
Then I am absolutely misremembering.
I guess that's really all I have to say about stage 2. Some pit cycles happened. Bubba Wallace got the lead, and he won the stage. And to be honest, I didn't think of anything of it. I'm like, Bubba Wallace hasn't been a factor all weekend. I doubt that's going to change. And it was true. He didn't do anything. And he kind of hasn't done anything this season. He finished top 5, I believe, either 4th or 5th. But I don't think Bubba Wallace is going to make the playoffs this year, to be honest. But anyway, just that's enough Bubba hate. The first 2 stages were nothing crazy special. You had a few contenders get knocked out. Martin Truex had problems. I forgot to even mention this in stage 1. Martin Truex had a pass-through pit penalty to start the race.
Yeah, I remember them saying something about that. I don't remember if they mentioned why. Some sort of technical infringement, but they didn't talk about it.
Usually when that happens, it's because they fail inspection multiple times, but I can even go on the app and see if there was a reason why. But yeah, so Toyotas sweep the stages at IMS, and yeah, the first 100 laps go by, and this race, not gonna lie, I was kind of thinking to myself, this race has kind of been a drag in a way. Like, I love NASCAR, I love the noise and the cars, but my goodness, this one has not a lot of passing, not a lot of. I was actually going to write in my notes, and I think I did write that the Gen 7 car has actually ruined Indianapolis because the cars are too close together. Like, because parity, when people thought that taking NASCAR back to Indianapolis Oval was going to increase parity because of how well it was doing on speedway races, they obviously had never watched Pocono. But the first 2 stages, I was actually not upset, but I was like, I'm gonna have to mention on the podcast, like, I think Gen 7 has kind of ruined Indianapolis because I'm not seeing any good passing. I am not seeing any good, like, overall racing. I am just seeing a lot of line racing and pit strategy. Well, then stage 3 happened, and my opinion did a complete 180. Before we do that, I have one note I want to share. And this was one thing I was paying attention to because I had a unique sitting position. So IMS experts, or actually, I'll start with you. It's the scoring pylon that's close to the tower terrace. If you go north of the tower terrace, and it's across the yard from bricks by about 300 feet or so, 200 feet, there's this really tall scoring pylon that's about 100 feet in the air, and it has the 39 positions of the racers.
Yeah.
And what was cool was at the end of all these tire strategies, there was a lot of lifting at that specific tower. You could tell a lot of drivers are using that tower as a marker to lift. And it is incredible how much more significantly quiet a stock car is when it lifts than when it's on the throttle, right?
Mm-hmm.
In fact, to me, it sounded almost like an electric vehicle. And then I wrote a note because there's an article on NASCAR last week that I want to discuss, and I don't have many positive opinions on it. And it's actually kind of making me afraid. Like, I need to go see a doctor afraid. NASCAR has built a prototype NASCAR E car, an electric NASCAR. And when I was listening to these cars lift at that scoring tower, I realized how much quieter electric cars are than V8 cars. And I realized that, wow, a lot of the fun of a NASCAR race, because listeners, one of the people I brought with me to the Indianapolis weekend wasn't a NASCAR fan. One of his son was a first timer. This was his first NASCAR race, and his father was previously not a fan. And one of their big enjoyments was the noise, the how loud it was. It really engaged you. I realized that the noise is a huge thing that NASCAR has going for it at races. That's why they sell tickets. People are like me; they love the sound of these stock cars. To them, this is stock car racing. This is what's always been. This has been the appeal of America's premier motorsport. It
I
is
mean,
one of the loudest motorsports.
even remember how people reacted to them running one at Le Mans. That was the thing that stood out to everyone.
Yeah, and people loved it. People, I on my Instagram feed, everyone was talking about like, LOL, like you have all these inline sixes go by, and you're gonna know when the V8 goes by. And it's like when I was even a kid, like when you'd watch movies like Cars or any NASCAR movie, the noise was what stood out to you. Like these things sound so cool, and we've even had games with the title NASCAR Thunder 2004. Like, to people, a huge part of NASCAR races are the senses that are engaged. It's the smell of the fuel and the rubber. It's the sound of these insane V8s. It's the look of these cars, of these stock cars with big numbers and nice paint schemes. It's the taste of beer, and it's the touch of whatever you have in your hand, probably a beer can. Um, but yeah, like I was saying to myself, when these cars and drivers were lifting at that tower, I'm like, this is probably going to be what electric NASCAR sounds like. And I'm not into it. I will probably follow NASCAR if it goes electric. I'm still going to enjoy the look of the cars, but when it comes to selling tickets, a lot of people won't be as forgiving as me. And I feel like NASCAR may have a big problem if they start going electric.
Was about to say, as someone who is not a massive NASCAR fan and loves electric racing, NASCAR dies the second it goes electric. Heck, I'd say NASCAR dies the second it goes to a six-cylinder instead of a.
NASCAR is the V8. NASCAR will die if it goes to a V10, probably. Like, to people, they are so passionate about NASCAR's past. And really, as long as NASCAR's been around, they've used V8 engines. Like, the last time NASCAR hasn't used a V8 engine, or the vast majority of the field hasn't used a V8 engine, was like what? Their inception? Like, the first few years of its existence? Like, it has always been about that engine and that sound it makes. And if you go up or down, it's going to be different. People may be able to live with a V10, but Eli's right. If you go down to a V6, it's still not going to be quiet. But is it going to be thunder? Is it going to be NASCAR thunder? Is it going to sound like a freight train of dark clouds going by? It probably won't sound the same. People aren't going to like it. And if NASCAR kills one of their most essential senses to a race, all of a sudden, I don't think my young friend who's, first time at his race, he's going to enjoy it as much. And to people who always disrespect NASCAR, their mouths are no longer going to drop open once they hear one. It's just going to be an electric series. So my proposal to NASCAR is please, 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 pretty please, don't you dare turn it electric. Keep it V8, but have a side series of electric NASCAR that races on like Formula E, like smaller ovals like Martinsville or Bristol or Richmond.
Swear to God, if the one thing that NASCAR finally tries to do to actually modernize is turn electric, that would be hilarious.
I would die, man. I would
It
be
would
so
be
sad.
idiotic, but you have to admit that like for all of the weird stuff they kind of hold back on the like artificial PR-ness that they uphold all their drivers to, the not great streaming system, those kind of hoops that you have to jump through. If all of that stuff, they don't modernize their social media presence, all that stuff, and then they decide to electrify, it would be objectively comedy gold.
Look it up. There, I am very nervous. Like, I forget if it was Steve Phelps or the director of competition.
I've seen the
What's
article
his
you're talking
face?
about, the proposal for it. As far as I can tell, because I've also read some of like the technical information on it, the only legitimate ground it's gaining is as a support series.
I was gonna say because like Steve Phelps was like, we have to realize that the automotive industry is going this direction, and as stock car racing, we need to modernize with the industry. And I'm thinking to myself, dear God, Steve, like you have done some pretty dumb stuff. This would kill your sport if you go electric. Like your sport is like 50% comprised of people who have been watching since they were my age and are now 60. You're going to alienate all of them.
You like if there is one word I would not use to describe NASCAR, it's modern. Even
That's right.
when NASCAR was founded, it was already 20 years out of date because it was founded based off of moonshining.
My like guys, here's a reference. In 2021, the year of our Lord, the the Koenigsegg Jesko was a thing. And the Koenigsegg Jesko existed along with stock cars that were racing with four-speed manual transmissions, no no Venturi tunnels. These chassis are completely one piece, cobbled together with sheet metal and fiberglass cars. It is not a modern sport. This is very much a thing. This is a thing that only is allowed to be a thing because of the fan base it's achieved. No
Yeah,
other series in the world could start up with like Eli. I watched the 2020 Goody's Fast Headache Relief 400 at Martinsville or 500, and Mike Joy. I remember during commercial break, he's like, "It's amazing how much 1990s technology we have in these 2020 stock cars." And I'm like, "You're right, Mike," and that's kind of why I like it. It's like these are very much a car. Like the drivers have a rough, clunky machine. They have to drive fast. Like this machine can go 200 miles an hour, but this thing is built for straight line speed and side by side racing. It is not built for cornering, really. It is, but it isn't. Like the technology is actually kind of cool. What they did with the Gen 6 to make it turn left easier with side force and the shark fin and everything. But those are still very
this is meant
those
to
are
go on a straight line and on steep banking.
well, yeah, because those are body modifications. These are not artificial like DRS things that NASCAR is using. These are pre-built into the body to help them do this thing faster. It is not an artificial aid. It's every stock car has it. So yeah, up until 3 years ago, there was still a racing series out there that was using a four-speed manual transmission with no active aero on its floor. In fact, the only active aero were two literal pieces of sheet metal for the spoiler and splitter.
Weren't the spoilers
There you go.
plastic or fiberglass?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's very thin still. Like it is not like if you look at any picture of the spoiler and splitter, it is very much a sheet of whatever it is. It has been very much mass produced.
I was gonna say I was thinking that the splitter was metal. but the spoiler was fiberglass, if I remember right, which is even more fragile.
So yeah, basically what we're trying to say, NASCAR should never, ever, ever consider making the Cup Series electric. You know what? It'd be cool if they got rid of the Truck Series and made it an electric, like, third tier series. But don't you dare make the Premium Series electric, or maybe even the Xfinity Series. Don't do that either.
They couldn't do the Xfinity series if the main series wasn't going to be. That would just be too different for it to have any bearing.
Yeah, like I feel like third tier is the best you can get. Like get these young guys used to maybe the speed of NASCAR or the style of racing with an electric car, and then maybe enter. I mean, then again, like it may have to be its own thing, like Formula E, where it doesn't even like contain the bigger picture. It just really does need to be a side series where like drivers can choose between the Cup Series or the E Series because you can make the E Series the third tier series, but the guys coming into that series are all like late model or dirt track racers who have already driven combustion engines their whole life. So you're just kind of not helping them in that way.
Yeah.
Oh boy, I have so much to say about not this race. I just have a lot to say about NASCAR. Um,
We do
anyway,
kind of need to get on to the last stint though, because we are running very long.
we are guys. This third stage changed everything for me, and I'm going to talk about the race and if we have time, kind of the crowd reaction to a lot of these things. Uh, quick note: Kyle Larson ran into Martin Truex, and that fueled my Kyle Larson hate because if any other driver wrecked Martin Truex that way because it was a skill issue, they probably would have been like memed the heck out of and asked to like retire. But Kyle Larson literally overdrives turn one and runs in a. He basically does a NASCAR the game move, like the game inside line. He just like turns. He goes into turn one way too hot and just shoves Martin Truex Jr. up the track, and everyone acts like it never happened.
You gotta love it.
Basically, I agree with you. He's still overrated, and this is just the beginning. Kyle Larson
It
fans, I'm very sorry.
God, it drove me crazy. Them. I mean, I know the commentary was different since you were in person, but the what was it, NBC this week?
Yeah,
CBS or whatever.
Rick Allen, Jeff Burton, Dale Jr.
Yeah, their crew talking about how, oh, since he ran an Indy 500, the Indy crew started to fall in love with him. It's like, what are you talking about? I like Dale, but dear God, is he trying too hard to act like this was as important? Like he was even getting into fights with people on Twitter about how it's totally reasonable to talk about this being one of their top races and comparing it to the top races in other series. It's like, no, you as long as the Indy 500 is still running, you do not get to compare this.
So yeah, so I just wanted to mention that because Kyle Larson, between in the stands with the fans and in the media, kind of made me upset this weekend. So the race in stage three, you know, it has that Martin Truex incident goes under caution. Brad Keselowski hits at lap 102, and that's going to be important later. And then once they restart, there's another wreck. This time it is, I forget who wrecks with him, but Joey Logano and Rats. Who else was involved? I forget. But the reason I remember Joey Logano was because the stands just erupted because he's a very disliked driver. And going to turn one when he wrecked, like the stands literally just started cheering. Like it was actually like loud. I also want to say the NASCAR, the IndyCar versus NASCAR race, the fans are a lot more passionate in NASCAR. I don't think there was a single person in the. There was very few people in the stands watching Alex Palou win that actually cared.
To be
But when
fair,
Kyle Larson won,
you're comparing that to the Indy GP, not the Indy 500.
that's true. It's true. But it is very passionate still. Oh, and I also wanted to mention that when Chase Elliott was battling Bubba Wallace for the Stage 2 win, people were absolutely losing their minds because he's the sport's most popular driver, and against Bubba Wallace, like it was a lot of fun how engaged the fans were. For me, it was very alive. But yeah, so Joey Logano and another driver who we may never know who it was, Rex, and brings out another caution to start Stage 3. And so a lot of drivers opt to pit early on lap 112, and they are hoping to stretch this fuel tank 48 laps. By the way, fuel only lasts about 40 to 44 laps at Indianapolis. They're hoping to stretch it a little extra to make this their last stop. One of those was Ryan Blaney. So the race goes on, and I want to say there was only one more caution. Let me look at the overall race finish to
I thought it was two more,
see.
not including the red
Oh,
flag.
I was gonna say at the end of the race, yes, but I mean like up to the last 20 laps. I think we were caution
Okay.
free. Could be wrong. We'll just say we're caution. Oh no, that's who wrecked with Joey Logano, was Jimmy Johnson. I can't
Yeah,
believe I
that's right.
forgot. I was so upset. Jimmy was in 11th place, and I was like absolutely excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, he could actually get a top 10. Nope, wrecked again. Feels
Jimmy,
like anytime. Yeah.
I love him, but these last couple of years, he's showing that he still has pace, but he keeps making mistakes late in the race that shows that he's not the guy anymore.
Eli, he's kind of been doing this since 2018.
Yeah, like I said, the last few years.
The last several years of my life.
It's just
Oh, yeah. Oh well. I was hoping Jimmy would get a good fit. In all fairness, Jimmy was wrecked. Jimmy didn't wreck himself. Um, I'll blame Kyle Larson. I don't know who did it, but Kyle Larson sent it 3 wide and wrecked Jimmy. But yeah, so that's a wreck. But yeah, so some people are on the lap 112 strategy. A caution has to come out because several, including Kyle Larson, pitted on lap 125. Let me look at the order. Boy.
wasn't that around the time that the three stoppers would be?
Yeah. Um. Oh yeah, it was the one with Josh Berry in it. Josh Berry wrecked and Martin Truex. Was that him? Did he wreck? I forget. Maybe it was John Hunter Nemechek, but yeah, it was the one with Josh Berry wrecked. So lap 124, I think it happened. So now, if you want to make the rest of the race on one more pit stop, you absolutely can. And this helps the people who pitted 12 laps earlier to save their fuel, and maybe they can make it too. All right, this is the last caution before the end of the race. So laps go by, and it becomes kind of a line race because Brad Keselowski, your leader, last pitted on lap 102. The man, Eli, this man is literally going to try to stretch his fuel tank 58 laps to the win. It is insane. And
Yeah, I
second
remember
place,
thinking. I remember watching it and thinking that's a bold choice.
Ryan Blaney is in second. The leaders are running about 52-second laps. They're all trying to save fuel by drafting off of each other. Brad Keselowski, of course, is saving fuel as much as he can. The goal is to get to the finish. However, the people who pitted on lap 125 They don't have to do anything like that. They can push as hard as they want. They have all the fuel they need. As long as they can take care of their tires reasonably well, they can race. Take a wild guess who just so happened to be the leader of that strategy.
It was Larson, wasn't it?
Yep. And so I start hearing a lot of cheering. Kyle Larson, one by one, is picking off all the people who are saving fuel. And in the space of lap 140 to lap 158, he's picking off cars one at a time, one a lap pretty much. What he keeps doing is he is drafting behind them until the last possible second, entering either turn 1 or turn 3, and he's diving underneath them. And it's working very, very well. Lap 140, he's 13th. By the time lap 152 rolls around, he's 3rd. He makes up 10 positions, and I keep watching this. Guys,
I remember this.
This race was amazing in person. There are a lot of Kyle Larson fans. The energy was amazing because with each pass, everyone was getting louder and louder. Because even I, after, past 12, 11, 10, he's in the top 10, it's like, nah, there's not enough time, right? Like Brad Keselowski, Ryan Blaney, they're in control of the race. You can't pass really well at Indy, but he keeps doing it and doing it because everyone ahead of him is saving and saving.
Well, so you wouldn't have gotten to see this, but I did, because they would show the telemetry of some of those cars. Some of those drivers were staying in 5th gear through the corners to save fuel.
Yep. What I'm kind of saying is, yes, this was amazing, but I was totally going to wait to use this as Kyle Larson propaganda fuel because everyone was like, look, guys, I had a friend with me. And friend, if you're listening, you know who you are, and I get why you're saying this. Kyle Larson is good. And what he did isn't isn't easy.
His
But
pit
my
wall's
goodness,
what won him the race.
I was going to say, but my goodness, will you please stop pretending like he should be an F1?
That was something that got me. At the end of the race, I think it was Dale, but it might have been another driver, tried to claim that he was one of, if not the best race car driver in the world. Not stock car driver. Race car driver.
Did you show that person his Indy 500 results?
I was offended.
Me too. It's like, my goodness, this guy has done this thing that has been done before because of superior pit strategy, and I get that Tyler Reddick wasn't, doing as well, but that's because Tyler Reddick was 2 spots behind him, and he was trying to pass all the cars that Kyle Larson just passed.
Not only
And so,
that,
of course,
just like if you had said he's the best, one of the best, if not the best stock car racer racing right now, or if you said he was one of the best oval racers racing right now, sure. But like to apply that to literally all of motorsport, he does good but makes dumb mistakes in NASCAR and hasn't ever actually achieved anything in any other series.
I agree. He's overhyped. He's very overhyped. He's a great driver, and he is one of the best NASCAR has right now. But
NASCAR has a legitimacy problem where they feel so looked down on that they have to overhype themselves, making them look insecure.
I have never thought about it that way. I just kind of think Kyle Larson's overhyped.
This is like the thing that I'm realizing this because it's also like it also goes to explain how they were trying to compare this to the Indy 500. Right? Like they're insecure that IndyCar has a more prestigious race than them.
Sure. Maybe Dale Jr. feels that way. Most NASCAR fans I talk to don't really share those feelings.
I didn't mean the fans. I meant like the company.
It may be, very well, may be. I think if they were truly insecure, they would probably try to advertise someone like Chase Elliott more than Kyle Larson, because Chase Elliott's their most popular driver. I
It
don't know,
just
maybe they
reminded.
are.
It was just something that clicked with me because it reminded me of something I read about Esteban Ocon earlier, comparing him to Alonso, and why, while their attitudes are similar, people love Alonso but hate Ocon.
Uh, yeah, but yeah, I think we can agree though. Yeah, it was kind of an overhyped win. Because Tyler Reddick was carving up the field, but you didn't hear anybody talking about Tyler Reddick. You heard people talking about Kyle Larson, because for the final 10 laps, guys, I was in a fantasy land. Like, I was having the time of my life, because you have these three cars that have broken away from the pack. As just those three cars. Your lead car could run out of fuel any lap. Your second place car is my favorite driver, and he's trying to, save his fuel as well. And the third place car is the hard charging Kyle Larson, who everyone is just losing their mind about in the stands as well. And so it is a very energetic last 10 laps of these three, tail to tail, following each other, trying to, win the race. It's amazing to watch. I was just so excited. I loved it. And what more to say, really, other than it was awesome in person to see it happening, to see them go by so close. And the only thing that I wanted was for that race to finish, the three of them. I wanted to see how it was going to start. Unfortunately, Kyle Busch decided to wreck with 2 laps to go and bring out a caution. The field restarts. The field will restart, and there's another caution. That brings out a red flag. And of course, everyone's, losing their mind. And
Didn't someone's
I'm,
oil line rupture and go like spread oil across the entire track, if I'm remembering right?
yeah, that was on turn 1. So they had to speed dry that thing up. So it takes about an extra 15 to 20-minute break to get all that cleaned up. And um, there was so much hype in those stands. So the field gets restarted. And Eli, you are very welcome to bully NASCAR, because NASCAR made a mistake and is getting talked about a lot. And you may know what I'm talking about. Kyle Larson should have been penalized, or the 5 team, because something really bad happened. And the fan, didn't even notice it until I came home and looked at Instagram. But for the final restart of the race, before they restart, Brad Keselowski dips on a pit road. He's going to be out of fuel if he doesn't. So you're telling me that third place Kyle Larson now becomes the control car?
Yeah.
That, to me, when I saw that, I realized, OMG, NASCAR messed up really bad. And when I'm seeing all these people say, they gave Hendrick a win, usually I discount it, because people always say that when their driver doesn't win a race. Oh my gosh, they actually did it. They gave the third place car, control car,
You remember before the
privileges.
episode how I was talking about how the ending kind of just confused me and lost me? This is what I was talking about.
Ryan Blaney should have been the control car, and of course, kept the outside. But no, that's kind of against the rules what Kyle Larson did. And just because you're in the inside lane doesn't mean you're the control car, because of the choose rule. And when I saw that, I realized, I think this may be the most blatant win that NASCAR ever gave Hendrick. Because that happens, and poor Ryan Blaney gets passed by Tyler Reddick into turn 1 because Kyle Larson ran him a bit wide. I'm not complaining about that move, it's just he got ran wide. And then, what's even more annoying to me is that going into turn 3, Ryan Preece had completely stopped on the guys, I timed it. Going into turn 4, after turn 3, going into turn 4, where Kyle Larson was about to enter turn 4, Ryan Preece had completely stopped on the racetrack. Go back and look at it.
Yeah,
Ryan
he
Preece is
had
not.
spun. Didn't he hit the inside wall too?
Yeah, and he was trying to get it refired, but he had stopped at that point and couldn't refire it. And NASCAR decides to give Kyle Larson the white flag with this car that's very clearly stopped in the middle of the racetrack and has no intention of moving anytime soon and has been that way since turn 4.
And then,
You
like, the
had,
second he takes the white flag, they throw the caution.
yeah, and you had 3/8 of a mile to throw the caution, and you didn't. Why? I
That's
get that. I get that NASCAR didn't want a repeat of the 2017 Brickyard 400, but you know what's at stake. Safety is at stake, first of all. Second of all, everyone knows you just gave this guy the win.
Well, here's the thing: the commentators had enough time to discuss whether or not a caution was going to be thrown before the white flag was thrown.
Oh my, yeah, it was maddening. When I saw it in the stands, I'm like, "Where's the caution? Throw the caution! Where is it? He's stopped!" And they didn't throw it. And I'm like, "Is Kyle Larson going to win this?" And I didn't even know at this point that he had technically broken a rule to win the race already. Now he had broken the rule and been given the white flag.
Here's the
And
thing: I
yeah,
would have almost respected it if they didn't then immediately throw the caution right after he passes the line. If
yeah,
they had just been like, "No, screw it, you're doing a full speed lap with that car there," I'd have been like, "You know what? That's stupid. It's dangerous, but at least it's not that blatant."
they have fans to please, and Kyle Larson is Kyle Larson from Indiana? I want to say he is. Kyle
Oh,
Larson's
idea.
from no, oh no, Oh, they call him the California kid. I think he's California. Here, let me see his driver profile. I want to say Kyle Larson. Yeah, Kyle Larson's definitely California because Sonoma is his home race. Yep, that's right. Elk Grove, California. Ugh.
Yeah, this is the stuff that confused me about the ending. Where I was like, I'm pretty sure none of this was supposed to happen this way. But also, like, I'm tired, so maybe I'm just missing something here.
Yeah, so
Glad to know that I wasn't losing my mind and that this was not how this should have played out.
no, he literally broke a rule and isn't getting the 5 team isn't getting penalized. It's sad as a race fan who appreciates racing, and when they see not their favorite guy in the world win a race, and when not only do you feel it's unfair, everyone else you follow feels it's unfair too. I think they made a mistake, and I think he should be penalized, and Tyler Reddick should be given that win. Um, but that's just my thought. It's very obvious that NASCAR needed him to win for some reason.
Well, because the narrative works, right?
Oh my god! Yeah, you're right.
He
It's all meant
didn't.
to
He
be.
he made a mistake at the Indy 500, fell back, but he was able to use the experience and the knowledge of the track from that to, when the Brickyard 400 came around, be able to get the win.
If Kyle Larson doesn't win this race, people are going to start saying things. I'm trying to think, what was NASCAR going to lose if Kyle Larson doesn't win? Maybe they didn't have anything to really to lose, but everything to gain because when Kyle Larson does win this race and the same paint scheme he ran at the double, it's kind of like he got his, he avenged it.
Well, that's
He,
even what the comment, like the post-race interview and stuff, was talking about. Like how this is redemption for the mistake. They didn't call it a mistake, even though it was 100% his mistake that cost him his position at the Indy 500. But the incident that caused him to drop from the top 10 at the Indy 500. That's what they referred to it as. The incident where
You know
he
what? I
completely
think
forgot
this.
what a pit speed limit was.
He's never known what a pit speed limit is. You know what? You're right, Eli. It's all a publicity stunt because, like, see, this driver that we want to introduce to the world, he isn't bad.
I don't want to get like too
He won't make
conspiracy theorist sounding with this. I feel like it wasn't like a pre-planned thing. It was just in the moment they're like, "Oh, hey, wait, we could do this." Thing.
I 100% agree. 100% agree with you. But that's all I really have to say. But yeah, if you're still listening, which I'm so sorry, go visit IMS. It's a good racetrack. They might just rig it at sometimes. But no, it's a great facility. I had a great time at the race. Ryan Blaney still finished third, so I was happy. But yeah, this to me, that third stage, made it so I really didn't have much to complain about for the race. It was an engaging race on the third stage, and yeah, I say NASCAR, keep going back to the oval. That's what stock cars are best at, is oval racing, and this was miles better to me than last year's road course race, because last year's road course race was let's just say it's one of those races where I'm like, I'm glad NASCAR's on. I wasn't like enthralled with the race. I'm just like, this is better than nothing. But to me, this race is premium racing. This is good. I was engaged, and honestly, do I prefer watching when I watched Kevin Harvick win at Michigan 2 years ago? Yeah. But was the actual race as good as this? No. And neither was the Sunseal Grand Prix. So I could probably say this was the best race I've ever attended. In all honesty, it was. I had a great time. And Eli needs to come with me next year.
Yeah, next year we'll just have to go to the 500.
Bruh. I seriously don't want to deal with pre or post race traffic. That's gonna be such a nightmare. That's gonna be such a nightmare. If we do the Indy 500, Eli, we're going to have to take off work Monday because, yeah, it's going to be insane. Like pre and post race traffic for this race was insane enough to think that this is going to get 5 times bigger in May. Because once again, there were 70,000 at this race. The Indy 500 is probably going to have 350,000 or more. Yeah, there's definitely going to have to, yeah, some
To be
planning.
fair, I take most
because it's
Mondays
going to be a
off
nightmare.
anyway.
Yeah, no, if we do it, I'm definitely going to save a lot, and we're definitely going to have to really carefully plan our Sunday and Monday, or I guess just Sunday. It's a noon race, but I mean, I would maybe want to go. I don't like heavy crowds like the Indy 500 draws, and I still prefer NASCAR's noise. So we'll just have to see ticket prices, because not gonna lie, going to this race made me realize maybe I don't want to go to the Indy 500 as bad as I think I do. I'm sure it'll be a good time, but right now I just need time to like go through the grieving process and get to the acceptance stage where I'm going to have to sacrifice a paycheck to go and a work day the next day.
It'll be fine. You've got close to a year
Yeah.
to prepare yourself.
You got what?
I said you've got close to a year to prepare yourself.
That's true. We'll talk about it when it happens, but for now, guys, I think that's all I gotta say about the race. Yeah, it was a good one. But it was totally rigged.
To be fair, this time last year you were telling yourself to not get a motorcycle.
Well, there were very different circumstances because of that.
Details.
Don't want to get too deep. Don't want to get too deep into it, listeners. But it turns out the brain is a lot like a bone. It can break. Anyway, Eli, go ahead and surprise me with your Eli 5 present.
Oh, yeah, other things we were going to talk about before that.
Oh, okay. I didn't know we were saying that for last. Going into news.
No.
I've been talking a lot. Eli, what? Wait, what?
We were still going to cover who ended up winning the Formula E championship and the controversy in F1.
Oh, that's right. Go ahead and do it. I'm tired of talking.
In place of a third race. Yeah, so anyway, if you listened to last week's episode, you would remember that we quite confidently stated that we would be covering the London E-Prix doubleheader this week that happened this past weekend as the finale to the Formula E season. I then watched it, and I am a Nick Cassidy fan, but the fact that we're not covering it has nothing to do with him not winning, and instead has everything to do with the fact that London is kind of terrible in Gen 3. It is just... all of the overtakes are by people just running into each other. So, Levi, you didn't watch the highlights or anything to know anything beyond the fact that somehow Jaguar fumbled a 1-2 in the championship, right?
Yeah, all I knew were the top 3 in the standings.
Yeah, so the first race, Cassidy didn't have a great qualifying, but to be fair, Cassidy often wins races without having a great qualifying. I think he actually might have the record for the lowest qualifying position to win, come to think of it. I might be wrong there, but I think he does. Because he has a tendency to hang towards the back till the end of the race and jump forward. But he qualifies like midfield, and then just keeps getting hit. Not in a way that any individual one completely ruins his race, but it's like tiny amounts of accumulating damage over time. And he still manages to recover from like 18th to 7th in the last 5 laps. And that's what keeps the championship alive. That and the fact that he takes pole the next day and gets the bonus points for that. Race 2, same sort of thing happens. Jaguar having Cassidy on pole and his teammate in second. His teammate, who is almost even on points with him for the championship. Yeah, Jaguar doesn't know what they're doing with that. So they have Cassidy take attack mode twice really early in the race, and then get completely terrified of having Evans take attack mode. Ever. If you don't take all of your attack mode in a race, you get disqualified. They run him to the near end of the race for him to take his attack mode. So what was supposed to happen is he would then take it shortly after Cassidy, and then they would be able to fight it out on track. Because that would also trigger Pascal Wehrlein, the other driver in contention for the championship at this point, to take his. And it would all sort out to where they'd be roughly, like, really close to each other, because they were all butted up towards each other. It would have probably put Cassidy in the lead, but, like, it would have been a mix-up. Instead, Jaguar kind of stabs Cassidy in the back, tells Evans to keep going, which was also a bad strategy because it meant that Evans is running at the front, burning all of his power. And then he doesn't take his attack mode until the last 7 laps of the race. It is a 1 minute 15 second lap. And he has 6 minutes of attack mode that he has to use up. To be fair, Pascal Wehrlein was doing the same thing. At this point, they're the only drivers that haven't taken it because they're both terrified of losing track position. Also, at this point, Cassidy got shunted, so he's completely out of contention. And Evans is like 10% battery lower than Wehrlein. Goes to take his first attack mode. They both take the same at the same lap, same time, same amount. And this is why you don't save your attack mode to both of your deployments of attack mode till the last second, because he goes to take it again. And it doesn't activate. Which meant that he had to go offline and lose like half a second. Again, the next lap, dropping him to 4th. And that is how Jaguar fumbled a 30 points lead in the Drivers' Championship in 2 races. Nothing else of note happened the entire weekend. And to be frank, if that weren't the championship battle, none of that would have even been notable. So that's why we weren't talking about Formula E this week. I am sad. Good news, there is fairly well substantiated rumor that next year the finale will not be in London. Instead, it'll be at Silverstone. If Formula E keeps up at this rate, they are going to have a higher proportion of dedicated tracks to street tracks than Formula 1.
Wow.
Yeah. Speaking of Formula 1, McLaren somehow managed to look like clowns while getting a 1-2.
Or Zach Brown.
I just... Hungary was an incredibly boring race. But dear God, did they, like... I swear the pit wall got bored too, so they just didn't know what they were doing. Red Bull, for some reason, kept trying to run long when it was obvious Max's tires were shot, which resulted in him not even getting a podium. To be fair, he was 4th, but still. Or, no, didn't he fall to 5th? Yeah, he fell to 5th. So there was that. At the beginning of the race, it was Lando Norris got pole, Oscar Piastri second. Oscar overtook Lando in turn 2. And for the first 2 stints, comfortably led Lando. Which was impressive. When McLaren decided to actively undercut Oscar with Lando. Oscar has been leading this race from turn 1. They have, like, when the first round of pit stops come around, Hamilton pits. He's running behind Lando. They have, on top of the pit lane delta and the actual pit stop time, the average time of like 2.5 seconds, they have an additional 6-second gap between Lando and Hamilton. So instead of pitting Oscar, who's in the lead, giving him the preferential strategy like any normal team would do, they pit Lando to cover Hamilton. And then the second round of pit stops come around. And they do it again. And then, instead of just going ahead and immediately pitting Oscar the next lap, no, they keep him out for an additional 2 laps. Listeners, this then results in, naturally, Lando taking the lead of the race on strategy against his teammate. McLaren immediately realizes what they just did and that it was incredibly stupid and starts begging Lando to give Oscar the position back. Because it should have been settled on track. Because you do not take away someone who, on pace for the weekend, like, has every chance and every shot at winning the race, his first race, because you, for some reason, undermined your own driver and strategy. But that's what they did. Lando, of course, was not happy about this, so he fought it for 20 laps. This led to Oscar Piastri apologizing for winning his first race.
It's that McLaren life.
Yeah. So, you mentioned before that you don't understand why they would swap them since Lando technically still has a shot at the drivers' championship.
Yes.
What I don't understand is how can you be so incompetent as to undercut your own driver and to make both of your drivers resent you?
Ask Mark Webber.
See, here's the thing. That didn't make both the drivers resent them. Just Mark.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been... There were so many better options here. There are so many ways they could have avoided this happening. And, to be fair, McLaren were willing to let them race. They just didn't want Lando to have the advantage because they messed up the strategy. If Lando had swapped when they asked him to, which was the lap after Oscar came out less than a second behind him, they would have let Lando race him for the win. They were going to. Or at least that's what they say. And to be fair, Lando probably would have anyway. So, like, some of this does fall, like, some of how awkward and rough this was falls on Lando. None of it falls on Oscar.
I wanted to say, I feel like Oscar's race was getting pretty rough. Like, I feel like there were highlights of him, like, getting in the gravel a few times.
Well, yeah, they were leaving him out on older tires. That's the thing. They were telling him to extend his stints longer than anyone else. Oscar had the pace to win this on track. Right? Like, even if they hadn't given him an ideal strategy, but just a slightly less terrible one, he still has a shot at it on pace.
Mm-hmm.
McLaren, I want to point out, blame here is 5% Norris, 95% McLaren, 0% Oscar. It's like, Lando was slightly petty. McLaren were morons. Oscar's just trying to do his job. Just the fact that you manage to make one of your drivers apologize for getting his first race win.
That's depressing right there.
That is a black mark on your team. Especially when, let's be real, you're not legitimately in... It would take some major shakeups for McLaren to actually have a shot at the Drivers' Championship. Which is also a thing that annoys me. So many people are talking about, oh, now imagine if Lando loses by 7 points. Yes, imagine if he does. Now imagine, and just consider, how many points he's lost by his own mistakes in all of the other races. By going wide, by crashing out, by improper positioning, poor qualifying. Like, Lando has made several mistakes this season. If Lando loses by 7 points, there are other places where there should be blame first than this. And he's not going to lose by 7 points. Either something massive and drastic changes and McLaren is going to just show up the rest of the year, or like it's not going to be close and Max is still going to keep a comfortable gap to everyone.
He is getting that new ICE.
Yeah, remember what happened last time he took an engine change at Spa?
Unfortunately.
Yep. But anyway, yeah, so that's why we weren't covering Formula E or Formula 1 this week like we originally planned to. The races weren't great, and to be frank, the controversies and drama surrounding them, it was really just people being idiots. So that's that done.
Like any good motorsport. Yeah. Well, do you want to get into Eli Fiver news?
Yeah, sure. Let's go with my little surprise segment here.
All right, my socks better be thoroughly knocked off.
Yeah, so some background, listeners. Last week, I randomly texted Levi saying, "Hey, don't worry too much about getting a guest for this week's Eli 5. I had an idea of something that we could do to replace it. Something I want to talk about. And it's something I realized. Right? I had a revelation come to me. See,
and that's usually the first sign he needs mental help.
No. Not that kind of revelation.
No, and denial is the first step of grief. I'm really worried about you.
Let's be real. I'm too far gone. But, anyway. I realized something. And it is a source of massive societal moral failure. You see, I just want to point out, you take, for example, other sports series. Football, soccer, baseball, cricket. These sports, well, just for reference, the easiest things I could find a source for this was the NFL. The revenue for the NFL in, I believe this number is from 2022, $13 billion. That is not the teams. That is the brand, the NFL. The teams, on average, somewhere around $400 million annual revenue. It's a lot of money for people just throwing a ball back and forth. This isn't even getting in to the absurd amount of money that's spent to slightly change the pattern on their shoes, to mildly change the stitching on their gloves, claiming that's some breakthrough in research and development that'll make them perform better, and not at all just a marketing gimmick. Right? Think about how much money is spent on that. Right? Just dumped into this thing that does not matter. Now, I want you to realize something. There are other competitions that exist where research and development is a fundamental aspect of them. These are competitions that, on their own, with their small budget, people doing this as a hobby, are incredibly fascinating and interesting to watch. Like, do you know about BattleBots? Or Robot Wars, or whatever variant of that exists?
Are these the robots that are going to prove why F1 is great?
I'll get there.
Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about, though. I know what you're talking about.
Right. they're amateur competitions, right? They're people with small budgets doing it as a hobby for fun. And, like, they take it seriously. They take it very seriously. But, like, their budgets are in the thousands of dollars. And, like, the series are lucky if they break $100,000 to run the entire event. I want you to imagine that one of those series gets the budget not of the entirety of the NFL, not even of a team, but of a single player on the team. For 1 year. Right. These competitions, like BattleBots, is incredibly interesting and entertaining to watch. On these tiny budgets. Imagine that they had $10 million for that. 20. 100. 400 million. What do you, like, if BattleBots had the budget of the NFL, we are talking about, like, being able to do full on mecha fights at this point. Instead, we spend $13 billion watching people play a playground game from the early 1900s.
I think if we gave BattleBots too much money, they would develop their own brain like Ultron, and it would just be a lot of Transformers taking over the Earth.
Great, we can get the funding from Lockheed Martin and the military-industrial complex. Even better.
We're going to have our own Space Force if we give BattleBots that much money.
Are you complaining?
No, I'd be into it.
Exactly. Can you legitimately tell me that if BattleBots did not have the funding of the NFL, that it would not be better than football?
You're talking to the guy who spent his entire first year on paychecks to build his own magnetic track. You don't have to convince me this is a good idea.
Exactly. That's the point. We're in the 21st century, right? We do not need these silly flesh sports anymore. We can make
Eli.
better.
Eli, you're scaring me.
We could do better. We have technology. We can have so much more interesting and compelling competitions than what we currently have. Like cricket. Cricket is not a legitimate sport. What legitimate sport takes 3 days and nobody scores a point?
Sounds kind of like some F1 teams I know.
We'll get to that. But you see, like, you understand where I'm coming from here? If we were willing to put this sort of money, this sort of care, this sort of attention on these other competitions, not just BattleBots, but, like, that sort of area of competitions, we would create so much more dynamic and interesting things to watch. They'd be so much more entertaining, so much more engaging, and actually have the potential to contribute to society. But we spend it on 20-year-olds giving each other brain damage.
But enough about my motorcycle.
But here's the thing. There's one area where we actually do this. See, and this is the thesis. This is why Formula One is great. Because we actually do that there. This is why a Constructors' Championship, where the cars aren't spec, but they're built, designed, advanced, upgraded by different teams. They're all different. They all get to do different things. That's why this is great. Because we get to see that. You get $150 million, you got 20-something races, build the best car you can, find the biggest madman you can to strap into it, and send it. Is it as good as giant robots fighting each other? No. But it's as close as we can get for some reason.
Shout out to MotoGP. The power to rate ratio is insane.
Yeah. MotoGP is basically any motorsport where there's an open construction championship, where it's not a spec series. This applies to. And that is why, basically, those are better than any other sport. This is why motorsport is the greatest form of sport. Because it truly unlocks the potential of what humans are capable of.
Listeners, if you think that Eli is in his lab like Green Goblin, like smashing the bottle of fluid to the ground, like about to get in the chamber to transform himself into a transformer, you're completely correct. Like Eli is about to like just hit the next level of mankind. He has like test subjects locked in his room. He has hostages he's going to test on.
Yeah. So my fundamental theory here is that Formula 1, MotoGP, WRC, competitions like that, they are the greatest form of sport. Because we don't have giant battling robots.
Eli is the greatest form of entertainment that humans could make our battling robots.
I'm open to other suggestions, but I think you do have a lot of ground to overcome there. To be fair, we could also spend the money to bring back dinosaurs and have them fight. It's a bit more barbaric, but I'd be open to it.
Well, we saw how Jurassic Park ended. I don't want to do that.
Just don't bring back any of the ones that can fly or swim, and, Look, all I'm saying is Epstein's Island's pretty empty now.
My gosh, man. If we... What about NASA?
What about them?
If I had to give more... Actually, you know what? NASA has all the money they need. They're just bad at their job. We need to...
I'm not talking about tax money. And besides, look, if we go to the robot idea, that's technological advancement that benefits NASA. I mean, look, global logistics, global shipping has been fundamentally changed and revolutionized by Formula 1. Right? Like, there's tangible benefits to this stuff. Can't say that about somebody throwing a foot.
Eli's like 10,000 years of human evolution, and we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of what we're capable of.
And like, to go a step further, think about how much money we blow on the Olympics. We build all these stadiums in some random city that are never going to be used again for a bunch of sports that nobody gives a crap about.
Well, that's the unfortunate part, is too many do.
Once every 4 years.
I agree with this point to a degree, but I also believe that, I don't know, the Bible.
Yeah, so anyway, all this whole thing was inspired by a random recommended tweet from a random anime reviewer talking about an IGN article about how the creators of Beyblade jokingly think that it should be added to the Olympics. Anyway, so that's my thesis statement, and on to the news.
Well, I'm the host. I'm going to make you go first again. You weren't talking enough. I want to hear you talk more.
I told you weren't ready for what I was about to pull out.
I truly didn't think... I thought you were going to pull out those AI F1 cars they built.
No, that was a disaster. See, bringing those up undermines my point. Maybe if they had enough money to actually do something worthwhile, if they, could have done a lap. I knew that that's what you thought I was going to talk about.
Because me and the racetrack, and I love autonomous racing. It's a lot of fun for me as a hobby, but
see, the problem here is you assumed I would be mildly sensible.
I did, but it's a legit point. I'm not going to undermine your point. I wish more money was put into. I'm not sure if I wish more money was put into sports like BattleBots or ones where the human mind has to really get involved. Um, or if I just wish maybe sports like that. You know what, Eli? I will I will add this to your argument, but this is all I have to add. And it was a really good point, believe it or not, by some random dude I went to high school with. It was seriously like that. I was kind of doing the same thing you were, not nearly as existentially, but I was kind of like, man, I wonder why like racing isn't more popular. Like I wonder how you could get it more popular. And this one kid takes out his AirPod and he's like, well, I think racing's never going to be as popular as your stick and ball sports because people just can't do it. Like people any kid can go buy a ball, any kid can buy a basketball or play baseball or anything and pretend he's a football player. Not every kid can afford a go-kart or a motorcycle. And not every kid is as easy to please like me and was perfectly content with Hot Wheels as a kid.
But you see, that's the trick, isn't it?
I think where this money should be going is making motorsports more accessible. Then the people will want to see it because a lot of times we want to do what we only believe we can do. And if you can make people believe they can do this thing and then show them that they can do this thing, then all of a sudden the interest goes up because we are just simple Neanderthals, even though we don't think we are. We're still simple. Everything we see, hear, and touch or smell or taste, it affects us. The more we do something, the more we want to keep doing that thing. If you expose a kid to motorsports at an early age and you keep exposing him to more accessible things where as a kid maybe you give him toys and die-casts and Hot Wheels, but once he gets older and is like, but can I do this for real, you're like, yes you can, it's very accessible now. The Eli 5 grant money can get us a go-kart, and he gets a go-kart. Oh, look at that, there's a go-kart track in town, now he can start racing. And that can pave his path to something bigger, but there isn't enough money to give a lot of kids the imagination they need, and not every kid is autistic as me and isn't perfectly okay with not having that.
To be fair, my fundamental actual argument here is that there is a ridiculous amount of money that genuinely gets wasted on these series that doesn't need to be for things like I brought up. How often do you hear about, like, you know, oh, Nike debuted a new material for the jerseys this year to make them 2% lighter or random crap like that? Like, fundamentally, there is a lot of energy and resources that gets dumped into these things, not to actually change anything, but just to be a new marketing device.
Yeah,
Right? Like, the NFL does not need $13 billion to do what it does.
no, but it's more rich white guys getting what they want.
Yeah, like, fundamentally, my point here is the fact that we have all of these other things that are as good as they are kind of shows that they're worth people taking the risk of investing more money into them. Because if they're as good as they are on a shoestring budget, imagine what they could be. But also the whole bit about this being entirely inspired by a random tweet that got recommended to me about Beyblade. That is actually where all of this came from.
I agree with your point, but and I just made my own point, so there you go. I think we should go on the news before this gets any deeper.
I told you I was going to blow you away. Now imagine if I had had time to make my PowerPoint presentation like I thought about.
I would quit this podcast.
No, you wouldn't. You just show up next week with your own.
Yeah, you know what? That's guys. No matter what Eli does, I come back the next week and try to relate that to why NASCAR is great. Anyway, well, yeah, let's go to news because frankly, I like this point, but I'd rather talk about it off air. Would you let me to be the host for 1 week, Eli?
Thank you. I just didn't know if you wanted me to talk about the stuff I have, or if you had something that you want to talk about first.
No, nothing. Absolutely nothing. My throat still hurts from tongue bathing NASCAR. So, go talk about Esteban Ocon and why he's like Fernando Alonso.
Oh yeah, that. Basically, somebody pointed out that they're both aggressive drivers and both get angry on the radio. To which someone else countered, "Yeah, but Alonso's good." So when it's coming from Alonso, like he has the skill to back it up. When it's coming from Ocon, it kind of feels like he's insecure and is trying to show everybody that no, he totally should be there, which leads to people actually questioning whether or not he belongs there when they otherwise wouldn't be.
But what about Esteban Ocon? Tell us about where he's driving next year.
Oh yeah, some genius decided to put him in a Haas alongside a rookie.
And that, let's just say that genius has a German accent.
What?
Isn't Toto his agent?
I mean, I think so, but as far as I know, this was a Komatsu thing.
Komatsu. Who? Komatsu.
Haas's current team principal.
Oh, you see, I have no clue who it is once Gunther Steiner left.
That's why I was confused, because I'm like, I mean, Steiner's not German, but he does kind of have a German accent, but their current team principal's Japanese.
So he's driving there next year. And have you heard the rumors about Kimi Antonelli going to F1 next year?
At this point, who hasn't?
Oh, let me rephrase that. Have you heard the part where Mercedes has all but confirmed he's going to be in the seat next year?
Yeah. Stupid decision.
Yeah. He did win the F2 race recently.
Fair, that's not why it's a stupid decision.
Oh, by no means, but at least he can still wheel it.
Yeah. No, it's a stupid decision because, well, think for 5 seconds about what happened to every driver that was put up against Max in the Red Bull, who was promoted too early and had too much pressure put on them.
Thankfully, George isn't Max.
No, he isn't. But still,
So it's still not great, but at least George isn't Max.
they are trying to rush him too fast. And I hope for his sake it doesn't blow up in their faces, but it would also be kind of funny for it to blow up in Toto's face. And by kind of, I mean really.
I think I may have talked about this before, and if I did, I think you may have agreed with me. Doesn't it feel like they're trying too hard to make him the next Verstappen? Like, some people just need more. Some people just need more time. Like, it's not a sin if the kid doesn't get into F1 before he's 18. Just because Max got in there before he's 18. Like, my brother made a metaphor in his, or a rats. What's it called when you liken something to another? A
Simile.
Simile. Thank you, simile. He made a simile one time on his podcast, and I totally think it's true. We shouldn't look down on people who need more time to hone their craft. Like, a painter could take 12 minutes to paint a portrait, or a painter could take 12 years to paint a portrait. and they both yield the same exact product, and that product is going to be very good, but they have different styles and methods of getting to where they need to be, and they have different mental development cycles.
Yeah, we
Um,
definitely did
and
talk about this. I think we talked about this when the FIA changed the requirement to allow them to give waivers to people under 18.
it does feel like Toto's worrying that if they don't get Kimi Antonelli in there before he's 18 or before he's 20, that his wiener will shrink compared to Christian Horner's because they got Verstappen in there before he was 18 and Verstappen became Verstappen.
I think Toto is. I think due to Mercedes' recent slump and aimlessness, that Toto has been put under pressure by investors.
Yeah.
And he is just desperately looking for something to change. Something to have good news for the team again.
Yeah. I think Kimi Antonelli could be a generational talent, but I feel like this year has kind of made obvious he needs more time. Like it won't be a sin if you give him an extra season or two.
I think he's closer to a Russell sort than he is a Max.
Yeah, but the thing is, we don't know, and that's the problem. We don't know until they give him more time because they didn't put Max in F2, then jump to F1 and skip F3. Max
No, they
dominated
put.
F3,
I was gonna
and
say.
F F3 is definitely more dominatable to a young generational talent than F2 is. So, but yeah, I mean, it could swing either way, but fundamentally, he needs more time than just the rest of the season. He needs at least one more year after this to fully develop his skills.
Yeah, that's the thing. Especially because Prema seems kind of lost in with the new regulations for F2.
Yeah. On the other hand, I don't know. I think we covered Ollie Bierman going to Haas, but I think Ollie Bierman is more than ready for an F1 seat.
That's the thing. We've seen him in an actual F1 car in a race, and he did hold his own.
Yeah.
That's kind of the thing. Is it's like it would be a complete other conversation if like Lewis or George had to sit out a race and they had Kimmy sub in for that race and he did well. That's not what we have though. All we're gonna have is his times in some free practice sections and a really unremarkable F2 season. If Hamilton catches COVID later this year and then Antonelli shows up and sticks it on pole, it's like, okay, yeah, no, sign him that weekend. But, and that, like, you know, that's why Bierman gets his chance. Because, yeah, he's had an unremarkable F2 season, but when they needed him in Saudi Arabia, he had a practice session that was cut short, and then qualified decently, managed to fight really well wheel to wheel on a very hard track he'd never raced on before, and get decent points in his first ever Formula One race. Like, that justifies you being put in a seat. Does it justify you being put in a seat that is supposedly going to be fighting for the championship? No. But he's not. He's in a Haas.
Does it also does well for Ferrari that when Lewis Hamilton's ready to go, Ollie Bierman's probably going to be ready to fill in that seat.
Yeah. You give him 2 years in a Haas, then, Hamilton will be ready to retire. You'll have sorted out some of the kinks with the new engine regulations, and then you got a chance to give Bierman his shot. Makes perfect sense.
I agree. Uh, any other news? I gonna say I haven't.
The FIA is going to trial some form of air conditioning during the practice sessions at the Dutch GP so that drivers don't have heat stroke again.
I would be into that.
We know basically nothing else about it, but I'm just scrolling through the things that I've saved. Uh, Marcus Ericsson claimed that Logan Sargent and James Vowles weren't on speaking terms, to which Logan responded, I have never talked to him, and he should probably not just start spreading rumors.
Marcus Ericsson moment.
Toyota is planning on adding a second model that they're going to run alongside their normal one in WEC.
Oh yeah, the Flex.
Yeah. They changed
The
the
model is.
regulations to stop Toyota dominance, and then Toyota's like, okay, well, if we can't spend all that money on one car, we'll just spend it on two.
Um,
Oh, right. We are forgetting something. Sauber canned Seidel.
what?
Did you not hear about this? Andreas Seidel
No.
got is leaving Sauber, and guess who's
Who?
replacing him?
Who?
Glasses man, Matteo Binotto.
Oh, you see, all I heard was about Bernardo getting the job. I didn't hear they canned Seidel.
Yep. To be fair, I haven't heard any details about what actually went on there, but um, Hulkenberg, at the very least, was not informed of it, which makes it seem like it's not planned. To be fair, Seidel has not been doing a spectacular job in the last, 2, 3 years he's been there. They
Yeah.
haven't exactly been improving.
I think Bernardo, Audi, they'll be a good team. I'm excited to have Audi in F1 myself because I, guys, I don't know if the listeners know this because I never got the most formal introduction when Eli talked to himself for our first ever episode, but I was a car fan before I was a race car fan. I genuinely just like cars and I like the car brands, and I've always liked how F1 kind of just, has these factory, kind of like MotoGP-esque factory teams of these race teams, and the more brands in there, the happier I am. Like I'm a very big fan of European supercars. I'm a supercar guy, muscle supercar guy. Yeah, give me Audis. I love having Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren. I loved having Alfa Romeo in there. It's a shame they're gone. But yeah, Audi. Yeah, the more name brand supercar companies that can come in, the happier I am. Which is why I am always kind of going to be 20, like decently unhappy that Red Bull is a thing. I really wish it was just car manufacturers in there. It's whatever.
I mean, they are now.
Um, wait. Oh, Eli's right.
To be
Eli's right.
fair, I think it might be the best looking hypercar that there is.
I mean, well-established car supercar companies that are very much car companies, because Red Bull it definitely can technically be called a car company, but they're not an Audi or Lamborghini that offer SUVs and whatnot.
At least they're going to make their own engines in the new regulation.
But having Aston Martin in there. When Aston Martin came in, I'm a big fan of green, so it's awesome having green. But yeah, right now I am counting five. Five of the 10 F1 teams are actual super, car companies, supercar European companies. And now we're going to have six when Alpine comes in, and that means just your Williams, and the Red Bull family are the only ones left, along with Haas. Hopefully, when Andretti comes in, Cadillac will be another just car company with, involved in F1.
Okay, but by
But
that argument, then Red Bull's going to be Ford.
that's true. That'll be nice. I mean, really,
Fundamentally,
it's not really an argument.
I'm always going to be pro more racing team. I prefer that model of, Red Bull Ford, um, Andretti Chevy, Andretti Cadillac. I prefer the racing team to be a racing team that is then partnered with a manufacturer than I do it to be a direct manufacturer thing.
Well, you can try. That's just what I like.
I just like a direct racing team has a tendency to stick around longer than a manufacturer.
Unfortunately, yes, but also I still love it because I'm a car enthusiast at the end of the day, and I like seeing my name brand guys out there having factory teams racing. But that's all I have to say about the Bonanno news and Audi news because I'm excited to get Audi in. Now we just need Lamborghini to take Haas's position.
I would rather literally anybody take Haas's position. Interesting, though. It looks like Alpine might soon have a new team principal. Oliver Oakes. This isn't confirmed, but it is rumored. And it is
What
the
happened to
same.
the whatever happened to the 2008 guy, the old Renault guy coming in?
He's not coming in as
Was
a
he
team
not?
principal. He's coming in as an advisor.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so it's sounding more and more. It is looking like Alpine might have a new team principal, and it is looking more and more like they're going to be running Mercedes engines.
Depression.
Yeah. And it sounds like this is
Um,
Briatore's plan. It's sounding like he's basically they hired him as an advisor, and he's shown up and gone. You guys literally do not have a plan. You have no direction. What are you doing? It is worth remembering Alpine's current team principal was actually just a random manager. Uh, do, do, do. I forget what his role was, but he was basically like just the manager of the motorsport division. And when Sofnauer left, he was supposed to only step up temporarily, and then was just like, "Nah, I'm not gonna bother having someone else between me and the team. I'm just gonna run it myself. I can be more efficient that way. And then the team got worse over the next 2 years under his leadership.
Oof.
Yeah.
Well, my mouth is getting dry. I don't have anything more to say myself with news or anything. Do you have anything?
No. But that news might be confirmed tomorrow because Famine is scheduled to speak at a press conference on Friday at the Belgian Grand Prix.
Well, listeners, if it happens, we called it.
Also, just as a point, because I just threw out the name Oaks, Oliver Oaks is the former team principal of High Tech in F2 and F3.
Oh.
So he's qualified.
Well, we look forward to that. We look forward to next week, and like the episode title of this kind of preludes to, is it's gonna get weird, guys. There's, because of the Olympics, not a lot of racing. Is all American racing series are, not gonna resume for 3 weeks. And that time, MotoGP and F1 share, well, they, take up a weekend. Formula E is over. Um, so basically, what we're gonna have to do is get creative with how we uh have, we try to cover 2 feature races each week. We for the next 2 weeks we have. Wait, is it for the next 2 weeks? So this was ending up, yeah. So for the next 2 weeks, we will have a feature race, and I do believe, if I check the calendar, we're gonna be able to fill all the slots until, yeah, we will. So yeah,
Sounds
the
good, Grace.
next 2 weeks, we're going to have a feature race, but we're going to have to get creative as to what keeps it company.
Don't worry, I've got ideas.
Yeah, it's going to get. I know next week I kind of want to do Superbike, but
That is an option for next week. I have basically next couple of episodes are going to be previews of what you can expect during the winter break.
oh no, the winter break's going to be overpowered.
Yeah. If
But
you thought my little 10-minute mildly unhinged rant was interesting, I have ideas.
listeners, his mental health has not been a thing in like 10 years.
Longer.
Oh no. Well, in that case, that's your preview for next week. Looking like you can count on Spa F1 and maybe Superbike if I get my wish. And I guess if Eli doesn't have anything more to add to this special cake that is irreverent, do you, Eli?
Nope.
For another week, this has been a host and his joke.
Is that actually how you're ending it?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Bye.